Welcome to our series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis. Today, Surrender, Part 3. From Sri Aurobindo. Question. Now I understand how I ought to surrender, but one part wants ordinary enjoyment and refuses a spiritual happiness that demands surrender. For this part, consecration is something terrible, and it wants to flee from it. Sri Aurobindo, you must remain firm in your will and use persuasion. Gradually, the rebellious part will surrender. It refuses to surrender out of ignorance. That ignorance must be dissolved. Question. How to open to the Divine Mother? Sri Aurobindo. By faith and surrender in a quiet mind. I have said that the human vital does not like to be controlled or dominated by another. And I said that that also was a reason why sadhaks find it difficult to surrender to the Mother. For the vital wants to affirm its own ideas, impulses, desires, preferences, and to do what it likes. It does not want to feel another force than that of its own nature, leading or driving it. But surrender to the Mother means that it must give up all these personal things and allow her force to guide and drive it in the ways of a higher truth, which are not its own ways. So it resists, does not want to be dominated by the truth light and the Mother's force, insists on his own independence and refuses to surrender. There is not much spiritual meaning in keeping open to the Mother if you withhold your surrender. Self-giving or surrender is demanded of those who practice this yoga, because without such a progressive surrender of the being, it is quite impossible to get anywhere near the goal. To keep open means to call in her force to work in you. And if you do not surrender to it, it amounts to not allowing the force to work in you at all, or else only on condition that it will work in the way you want, and in its own way, which is the way of the divine truth. A suggestion of this kind is usually made by some adverse power or by some egoistic element of mind or vital, which wants the grace or the force, but only in order to use it for its own purpose, and is not willing to live for the divine purpose. It is willing to take from the divine all it can get, but not to give itself to the divine. The soul, the true being, on the contrary, turns towards the divine and is not only willing, but eager and happy to surrender. The spiritual seeker does turn aside from the pursuit of realization to mere idealizing, not to idealize, but to realize the divine truth is always his aim, either beyond or in life also. And in the latter case, it is necessary to transform mind and life, which cannot be done without surrender to the action of the divine force, the Mother. To seek after the impersonal is the way of those who want to withdraw from life. But usually they try by their own effort and not by an opening of themselves to a superior power or by the way of surrender. For the impersonal is not something that guides or helps, but something to be attained, and it leaves each man to attain it according to the way and capacity of his nature. On the other hand, by an opening and surrender to the Mother, one can realize the impersonal and every other aspect of truth also. The surrender must necessarily be progressive. No one can make the complete surrender from the beginning. So it is quite natural that when one looks into oneself, one should find its absence. That is no reason why the principle of surrender should not be accepted and carried out steadily from stage to stage, from field to field, applying it successively to all the parts of the nature. But the surrender must be to the Mother, not even to the force, but to the Mother herself. If the psychic manifests, it will not ask you to surrender to it, but to the Mother. The effort demanded of the sadhak is that of aspiration, rejection, and surrender. If these three are done, the rest is to come of itself by the grace of the Mother and the working of her force in you. But of the three, the most important is surrender, of which the first necessary form is trust and confidence and patience in difficulty. It is necessary, if you want to progress in your sadhana, that you should make the submission and surrender of which you speak sincere, real, and complete. This cannot be as long as you mix up your desires with your spiritual aspiration. It cannot be as long as you cherish vital attachment to family, child, or anything or anybody else. If you are to do this yoga, you must have only one desire and aspiration: to receive the spiritual truth and manifest it in all your thoughts, feelings, actions, and nature. You must not hunger after any relations with anyone. Question: is it not possible to transform the being without surrender? Sri Aurobindo: if there is no surrender, there can be no transformation of the whole being. Question: when does real surrender begin in a sadhak? Sri Aurobindo: it begins when there is the true self-offering. Question: how to bring about true self-offering? Sri Aurobindo: by not following ego and desire. It is ego and desire that prevent surrender. Question: What is the sign to indicate that a sadhak's determination to surrender to the divine is having practical effect in his life? Sri Aurobindo. The sign is that he has full obedience without question or revolt or demand or condition, and that he answers to all divine influences and rejects all that are not from the divine. Question. Is it not a fact that even after repeated determination to surrender, the old habits come in the way of its effective realization? Sri Aurobindo. Yes, certainly. They always do that till the sincerity and purity and surrender are complete. Question. What is the most powerful way to make the determination of surrender rapidly effective? Sri Aurobindo. Absolute sincerity. Namaste.